Hello everyone. Today we are going to cover an important aspect of Mars affliction. Some people call it Mars defect. It's also called Mangal Dosh or Mars Dosh in Indian Hindi context. So let's start with the premise of how the Mars affliction takes place, and most importantly, how does it cancel out? Because most of the time, people are perplexed if someone tells them, oh, you have a Mars defect in your horoscope. Things are going to be haywire. For marriage, it's going to be crazy. You will not have a good married life, or you may not find someone unless the other person is also Mars afflicted. So we need to follow some of the rules to understand one, do you have the Mars affliction in your horoscope? And two, how or in what cases does it cancel out? This is very, very important because most of the time people are they have an anxiety about this thing. And you see, where you see these black numbers, black colored balls numbers, these are the houses. First house, second house, third house, fourth house, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th. This is just for reference for those who do not know what are house numbers and you're not too well aware of how the horoscope is read. So just make sure that these numbers are the houses, they always remain the same. And these numbers you see here, this is an example of a Libra ascendant. So for a Libra ascendant, you will have 7 number here. So just for reference purposes, we're going to refer to this horoscope for our discussion. But in your horoscope, there could be 6 written here, 1, 10, 4, anything. So just refer to the house numbers for now. So let's get started. So here you see where you see these red spots. If Mars is placed in any of these 5 signs, 5 houses, house number 1, house number 4, house number 7, house number 8, and house number 12, then your Mars is afflicted. That's the first premise of knowing where all is Mars afflicted. Then again, people say, and it is believed that Mars is most afflicted if it is in your 7th house or in your first house, because this house denotes your personal well being, your personality, your self confidence, and this is the house of your spouse. So if Mars is in 1 number or in 7 number, then you have a severe Mars affliction or the dosh. Okay, now here are some pointers I've written in cases where the Mars affliction gets cancelled. Most people don't talk about why is it getting cancelled. So let's talk about it. So let's say if Mars in this particular horoscope, if Mars is sitting over here in the 7th house, so then this is its own sign. Aries is ruled by Mars. So when Mars is sitting in its own sign is 1 and 8. So let's say if you were looking at a Scorpio ascendant and Scorpio was here, even then, if Mars is sitting in 1 or 8, and either of the 1 or 8 happens to be in this particular zone, then your Mars affliction gets cancelled. Now let's talk about the second point, where it gets exalted. Mars gets exalted in sign number 10, which is Capricorn. So if in your case Mars is placed here and it is by default exalted, so which means that here it will automatically cancel out your affliction because it's in the best phase to give you results. So it will never do any harm to your overall married life or any other stuff. Third point, the degree of Mars. Now let's say Mars is wherever, like sitting over here, and there are degrees of a particular planet, which tell the strength. So if the degree is anywhere between 0 to 2, or the degree is between 28 to 29, I mean 29 until 0. So these degrees make the Mars very, very weak. So even if your Mars is afflicted, it doesn't have the power to like cause that kind of a detrimental effect on your life that it would have if it was strong enough. So if the degree is weak, see why I'm talking about this thing is so that in a layman's language, you understand the logic of why it cancels out. Next point is the Jupiter conjunct or aspect. So let's say you have Mars here and Jupiter also sits along. If Jupiter is sitting right next to Mars, if it's a conjunct, don't even need to look where they are. By default, Jupiter is going to cancel out the Mars affliction, whether it's here, 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 any of the houses. But Jupiter also brings in another element. By its aspect, it can reduce or cancel the Mars affliction. So let's take to the same example that Mars is afflicted in house number 8. Since it is afflicted in house number 8, and let's say Jupiter is sitting here in house number 4. Now, Mars is here, Jupiter is here, but Jupiter, through its aspect of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's aspecting the 8th house. So, even through aspect, Jupiter will cancel your Mars affliction. Next, let's say we have Mars over here. Now, Mars is in the first house, and at the same time, we also have Sun next to Mars. It could be next to Mars, it could be one house before Mars, where Mars is situated, or one house after, but it is making Mars combust. Let's be very clear, Sun next to Mars doesn't necessarily make it combust. There is a certain degree which needs to be checked that whether Mars is in that degree range of Sun or not. So if Mars is being combust, then the Mars affliction again gets cancelled. And now the last point, which is purely like to do with what if my Mars is sitting in the 7th house? And in this case, apparently the 7th house is the lord of Mars. Mars is the lord of the 7th house. But let's say, just for example purposes, here it was written, let's say it was 11. Let's assume this number was 11. Just change the color so that it's evident. So here in 11 sign, you have Mars here. So how does it cancel here? If let's say right next to the Mars, you have the owner of Aquarius is Saturn. The lord of the Aquarius sign is Saturn. If Saturn sits next to Mars in this house, it will cancel out your Mars affliction. Though it will be tricky from another point of view, the Saturn-Mars conjunction, but purely from the point of view that Mars is afflicted. Mars is no longer afflicted because the 7th house lord is sitting in the 7th house when Mars is here. This also applies if the 7th house lord is aspecting the 7th house. Saturn can aspect 7th house from here. It can aspect 7th house from here. It can also aspect 7th house from here. So either of these places, Saturn is aspecting your 7th house. And this theory applies only to the 7th house when Mars is in 7th house. This doesn't apply if it's in the 4th house. So hope in this video, I was able to clarify what are the scenarios under which your Mars affliction is getting cancelled. If you apply any of these things, trust me, in most cases, see, if you look at basic mathematics, 5 out of 12, it's like almost 45% of your overall horoscopes would have a Mars affliction. And because of these factors, a lot of them do get cancelled. Now, let me just quickly go back to my screen to continue on this. So see, Mars affliction does get cancelled in many of these scenarios. So what is most important here is that if at all none of these principles apply in your particular case, then in that case, at the age of 28 above, the Mars affliction reduces its effect. It starts getting weaker. So either which ways, don't get perplexed by it. And if you're looking for a particular remedy for this, remedy needs to be done. I mean, it can't be done in isolation, looking without looking at the details of the horoscope, where each of the planets is placed. In some cases, if your planets are positioned well, you may be recommended for a ruby or I mean, for a red coral. So that's something which can be recommended. But again, that is something which is purely based on whether your horoscope suggests that. Subscribe to my channel and keep following for more such engaging videos.